outside, please.
No pencil
Security.
provided this time.
We're not that bad yet.
Yeah, wait till later this session.
The next thing is, we've all been to meetings. We all know how to treat each other. And so I kind of expect everybody to treat each other as humans and be nice to each other. If someone gets out of line, we certainly have the resources within the room to get somebody out. And if that's not enough, we'll call the Department O. So how's that? So in
I
other
can
words,
do it, Mr. Chairman.
thank you. Ashley, with that, could we have roll, please?
Sure thing, Mr. Chairman. Representative Allred.
Here.
Representative Andrew.
Here.
Representative Berger.
Here.
Representative Brown.
Yeah, here.
Representative Clausen.
Here.
Representative Lawley.
Here.
Representative Obermuller.
Here.
Representative Provenza.
Here.
Chairman Northrup.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. We're all here and accounted for. All right, we have three bills that we're looking at working in today. We have House Bill 20, House Bill 21, and House Bill 40. House Bill 20 is School Finance Regional Cost Adjustment Study. Would anybody from committee like to take this on, or do you want me to just give a quick summary?
Sounds like you did a great
Nope,
job.
no.
Just ready to go. Yeah.
No takers on it. All right. This is collecting data. I'm just going to summarize it real quickly because we're just going to collect some data so that we can work on a new WLCI number. I mean, cost of living number. There we go. Make sure I get it all put together. With that data, we're asking for the Department of, which one was it? Nobody remembers? I read it. All right, we're asking for some departments to give us some numbers. How's that? I'm sorry. Department of Workforce Services. There it is. I was trying to find it. Okay. Would anybody like to comment on this bill? Pretty straightforward. We got some takers. There we go. Please state your name. And continue.
Flood County. I was starting to scribble notes down. I figured there would be some people that would speak before me. But I think the bill here, for all the data it collects, misses something. I think as you go forward and look at this data, you should take the data, you've got information in there on who leaves education and what field do they then go into, what kind of salaries and so on. But how about the performance of the school districts relative to the money they're spending? What are their SAT, ACT scores? How many kids go to college? How many kids go to the service academies? How many kids go to trade schools? And things like that. And compare that performance relative to the expense in a given district so that you have some idea of perhaps the efficiency or performance of the leadership and the teachers in the classroom. I've seen you over the years struggle with measuring the performance, the classroom performance and so on, but I've never seen you actually compare cost versus performance district by district or however you might do it. So just a thought for you, Mr. Chairman, subject to your questions. Thank you.
It's too quick. I couldn't. You don't have a question? Questions for Mr. Winnie? All right. Thank you, Bill. I think that's a good place to put that. It's not, maybe not in this bill, but maybe in another bill that we'll put that in and look at that.
Mr. Chairman, Boyd Brown, Wyoming School Boards Association. Just a couple of thoughts. If you look at B little I, it talks about not later than October 1st, reporting vacancies. Again, that's a snapshot in time, especially in large districts. You have openings throughout the year. So it may be better to look at a full year worth of vacancies rather than just that one snapshot in time where we're reporting it. I'm not sure how that was looked at whenever we talked about it. And I know it went through committee and I probably didn't do a good job of speaking about that at that point. But I think it would be better to see a full year's worth of vacancies rather than just snapshot in time. For the most part, when you're looking at administrators and teachers, you're probably going to catch that if you look at the time frame that they're looking at. But when you're looking at some of the other ones and even some of the teachers that may leave during the year, looking at a full year, I think would give us a better snapshot of that.
Okay, so you're on page 2, line 5, correct?
And I didn't pull up my introduction.
You're good.
I believe that's probably page 2. Yes, page 2, line 5 through 16. So I think it talks about 3 months, and I think that you'd get a better snapshot if you looked at a one full year.
Thank you. Anything else?
Not right at this moment, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Tate Mullen, Government Relations Director for the Wyoming Education Association. I do want to reiterate some of those comments by Boyd. I think not only is that information important to gather on a broader scope, it gives us a better understanding, not just for the Wyoming Cost of Living Index, but we are looking at that teacher shortage, the retention, really understanding the significance of that problem across the state of Wyoming. I think this data would help. That point in time, again, is problematic because we do see that rotation, whether that's classroom teachers or ESPs. I think if we collect that on a broader scope, it would be far more helpful. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Go ahead, Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So would the only change need to be on page 2, line 16 from 3 to 12? Or are we looking at other portions of the bill that would need to change as well?
Conforming on that, I believe that the rest of that is just taking a peek here. Yeah, that looks like occupation for each camp. Yeah, that looks like that would be the main section. There might be some conforming pieces in there. I don't have the engrossed version pulled up with the lines, but at a brief glance, that's what that looks like. And
Mr. Chairman, when we get to this, if it's the committee's will, we can do conforming amendments, allow LSO to kind of walk that through. I just wanted to make sure if there was anything that I was missing that maybe you had already attended to.
Go ahead, Representative Overmiller, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tate, can you just walk us through, remind us on page 4 to start with, and also on page 5, what's your understanding of that? The necessity of that information and what we're trying to get at there. What's your understanding of that on page, starting at line 9 on page 4? The gathering of that particular retirement system information, and then the mileage to city centers on page 5. Just what's your take on those? Why we would gather that information, for what purpose?
Chairman Northrop,
Please go ahead.
Representative Obermueller, this was requested by Dr. Christina Stoddard in her assessment of the Wyoming Cost of Living Index. And she is probably better able to speak to all of the variables that she wants to look at in terms of those cost indices and those adjustments. So I don't want to speak directly to her work without, I feel like I'd be stepping on toes.
Stepping on toes is what you do.
Chairman Northrop, Representative Obermueller, some days more so than others.
He makes a tough dance partner. All right. Anybody else have any questions for Tate? Thank you, sir. Does anybody else like to testify for or against the bill? If not, we'll proceed. Winnie, what's your pleasure?
Move the bill.
Sounds like it's moved by Provenza, seconded by Brown. Is there any additions, corrections, or do you want to go through this page by page? Let's go through it page by page. Anything on page 1? Now we're to anything on page 2. Go ahead, Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Based on testimony, it sounds like maybe we need to look at a bigger snapshot than the 3 months. So I would move that we amend line 16 on page 2 and any conforming amendments that would ensure that we can look at the last 12 months.
Been moved and seconded. That way make it 12 months instead of 3 months and conform it. Ashley, did you get that? Very good.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Representative Brown.
Discussion on
Chairman
that.
Brown.
Maybe if we, instead of doing 12 months, because that's going to give us a snapshot of not only this year, but depending upon where that's at from the previous year as well, I would say within the past school year.
This was when we were going to put 15.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I guess I would look to Boyd or anybody else with interested thoughts on that. Maybe instead of doing the amendment through this committee right now, maybe it's worth it to, unless they want to come up and give us the specified language that they like, but I fear doing 12 months right now looks back not only at this year, but last year, depending upon when this comes out. I think that's my only concern. And if nobody else shares that, I'll shut up.
Well, go ahead, Dr. Boyd. Do you have any comments on that?
Again, I don't want to speak for all the districts out there, but I think the idea of a longer period of time there gives you a better snapshot rather than 3 months. Again, this is probably going to be somewhat of a new report for districts, which again is asking them to keep track of something that they may not be keeping track of at this point. So again, appreciate the opportunity to speak, but don't want to speak for everybody out there.
Very good. Go ahead. Representative Clauston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Boyd, you might want to stay there. Thank you. I guess 2 questions. First, do you know these dates that were given, these timeframes, were these from Dr. Stoddard and her research? Are there reasons that she wanted these specifically, or did we come up with these? And then second of all, if we did a June 1st to May 31st, I mean, there are summer staff that we try to fill and get maintenance stuff done in the summertime. So those are my 2 questions on what dates would you pick? And then also, are there reasons that she wanted these dates?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
Representative Clausen, I do not know why those dates were picked or who picked those. So, and I guess if it were me wanting the data, I guess I would look at a fiscal year, which I would consider July 1 to June 30th. So that would be me. That would give you a full year. That would look at the people in the summer. Looking at it from her perspective, I believe she wants to see what happened the fall for hiring new teachers, and that's probably why it would be October. Why she's looking at that October 1 date. So again, I'm not sure, but I think if I had the opportunity, if it was for me, it would be a fiscal year that would follow a fiscal calendar, and you'd be looking at last year's teachers probably and this year's certified staff.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, Brian Farmer, Wyoming School Boards Association. So I think what Dr. Brown just hit on at the end is probably key to what Dr. Stoddard is looking at. Obviously, when you look at the title of the bill is talking about the regional cost adjustment. And so if you're talking about regional cost, your biggest consideration is, did we fully staff for the school year? Were we able to hire the teachers over the summer that we needed to hire to be staffed for the school year? That's the question for regional cost. Or if you don't have that full complement of teachers or staff, then your next question is, why is that? This report doesn't necessarily give you that, but it could give you insight into the magnitude of the particular problem. So what you're getting with what's offered here for the purpose of regional cost would inform you whether or not you were able to hire staff for the school year. If you're looking at the issue of teacher retention, teacher recruitment, and district staffing overall, And your concern is with regard to Wyoming cost of living and how do we assess whether or not we have good data to make decisions on cost of living factors? That's probably a different question. So I think you have to think about what is the purpose of what we want to achieve. If the goal is specific to regional cost, then you're looking at, okay, how did we do it getting ready to go for this year? Did we field a full team? If you're looking at a bigger question about how are we doing in terms of staffing our school district, that is a year-round question, and it has more to do with a year-round picture of whether or not there are external factors impacting us. So if you're looking, for example, at Converse County School District number 1, which is Douglas, one of their biggest challenges is going to be hiring bus drivers. When you've got a county that's paying lots of money for people to be out in the oil fields and gas field to drive trucks, even a water truck up and down a road, what do you suppose happens to bus drivers? That becomes incredibly difficult to fill. Or even clerical positions. Your competition is not just, do we have affordable housing within our community to bring in teachers for the school year, but it becomes that year-round management of the district sort of question. So I think your questions are all wonderful questions, but you have to think about what is the purpose of what we're studying. Do we want all of the information for different purposes?
Go ahead, Vice Chairman Overmeal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, back to my original question on the questions, if they relate to the regional cost adjustment, if that's our narrow focus. Well, what's the purpose of you want to weigh in on what the purpose might be of gathering the retirement information and the mileage to the center of a town that's of at least 15,000 population? I mean, what are we, in terms of a regional cost adjustment, what are we trying to get at? Do you have any views on that, or is that at the doctoral level also?
Go ahead, Brian.
Mr. Chairman, it is difficult to see relationships there. I think retirement at least is looking at, again, part of that recruitment retention sort of picture. Is this part of a benefit that attracts a staff? So that question can potentially lead to the overall question of, is the salary and benefit sufficient? So if we're talking about retirement, but again, vacancy should answer that same question. Either they came for the money or they came for the benefits. Matters that they're there or they're not there. So it's difficult to ascertain how retirement would tie to an RCA. Transportation does not. Transportation is not directly a factor for RCA, except when you start looking at where do people live. That's not the data being collected here. So if you're in Teton County and you're looking at where do teachers live, if teachers live over the mountain in another state, then those folks are having to drive in, and that's what we're having to do just to staff a school district. If you're looking at Carbon County School District number 2, which is Saratoga, and you're saying, hey, we've got multiple attendance centers spread out across eastern Carbon County. You've got Hanna, you've got Elk Mountain, you've got Medicine Bow, you've got Encampment, Saratoga, and you're trying to say, where do our teachers live? Sometimes we conceive the school district as Mayberry, and your teacher lives down at the end of the block and can walk to school. That's not always the case. So this data might be telling us something about that, but that's a stretch. The data itself doesn't tell you that. How you use the data, I think, is going to be the important question.
Thank you.
I'd just say that in my county, in particular, Meeteetse has quite a few teachers who are living in Cody and beyond and are actually coming to Meeteetse every day, driving back and forth. So part of that 15,000 regional cost center is just because they're looking at trying to find out where do people shop also. Tin Sleep, for example, has to find someplace to shop rather than the general store. So
And Mr. Chairman, as you note, with the ECA, then we get into questions of a hedonic index or some other type of indexing, Wyoming cost of living. What becomes a measure of cost pressures of individuals? Again, not the scope of this bill, but could potentially be information valuable for the legislature.
Representative Berger.
And Mr. Chairman, and correct me if I'm wrong, last year we looked at the RCA and we just feel that we're not doing a good enough job because it seems like only a couple districts are even barely qualifying for an RCA. Am I correct on that or?
Mr. Chairman, I think the challenge with regional cost adjustment has long been, do we have good data to
Okay.
ascertain what makes different regions cost differently? So it is easy to get confused or to slide between
Yes.
ECA, the external cost adjustment, and RCA, the regional
Mhm.
cost adjustment. So within the ECA, external cost adjustment, you're talking about cost pressure, essentially inflation,
Yes.
inflationary factors. So what makes a community expensive to live in?
Mhm.
For some, that is the cost of housing. Some of our indexes do an okay job at accounting for the cost of housing. There are other indexes that make presumptions. The comparative wage index, for example, makes the
Yeah.
presumption that people are paid an adequate wage in order to account for the cost pressures within the community itself. What we observed when we looked at the comparative wage index is that it identified that we had higher wages in our mineral-rich counties. And so certainly that said, yeah, those are tough jobs. If you're going to get somebody to work that job, you're going to have to pay them a wage that's worthwhile to get them to do that.
Correct.
But it does not necessarily have a direct correlation then to the cost of housing. Is there a housing crisis within communities that have mineral, high mineral wealth? That's not always the case. You can have towns, excuse me, where the cost of living is relatively low. Take Basin, Wyoming, in Bighorn County. Cost of living in Basin is not terribly high, but take a look at the available retail market. What houses are available for a teacher to move in, for a school psychologist, a bus driver, a speech therapist? What's available? And so I think one of the challenges for regional cost is trying to identify those factors that can make one community more expensive than another. And how do you evaluate and how do you weigh those different factors? And we have several different indices, but none of them give us a complete picture when trying to ascertain that information.
Mr.
Representative.
Follow up?
Yeah, go for a follow.
Just a quick follow up and no community is the same in Wyoming. But and that's what I want to find out in this study is, can we see the individual, yet there's differences, but will we be able to see the individual issues for each community? Does that make sense?
So, yeah, Mr. Chairman, Representative Berger, again, I think looking at what we're currently doing, and again, the regional cost adjustment cannot be below 0. So everybody's at 0 or 1, and then you can move it up, but nobody gets moved down on that based on the previous Campbell cases, from my understanding. And currently, you get to choose between different indices, and some indices, like Mr. Farmer was saying, address certain areas more than others. So usually the areas with high wages, you will use one index. Places with high housing costs will use a different index. And so it just depends on where they're at, and districts change back and forth. One of the things that has been difficult, and they've worked on the regional cost adjustment study quite a few different times, but have not come up with a way that people will all agree on, including probably school districts and legislators, to move that forward. I think the last one that was brought in was 2010.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, just to further that answer.
Sure, go ahead, Brian.
Just to further that answer, much of what Dr. Brown talked about is with regard to the ECA, the external cost adjustment. And then the challenge becomes, how does that then relate to the RCA? Is there a connection? We've looked to use some of the same indices in the past, and sometimes that has been successful and sometimes it has not. Because those different indices of the ECA have different points of emphasis, we would hope that we could then use same or similar information for making decisions about the regional cost. The ECA is cost over time. The RCA is cost over space. Is my cost in Cheyenne the same as your cost in Uinta County or wherever across Wyoming? So the hope is to find a relationship between indices used in those different areas.
Representative Provenza, you had a comment, question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think now that we're having all this very complicated, high-level discussion, I'm remembering that I think part of the motion that we made during the interim was letting the experts just kind of like figure this out. And so now that I'm warmed up and kicked into gear, it might make more sense to move forward with the bill that we have. If there is something that our experts agree that we need to adjust, then having, maybe the Senate is well versed for that discussion. Or certainly we can take that up, but I part of my concern now is just given the complexity of this issue, and not having gone through all of the detailed discussion again that we went over interim, maybe we need to withdraw this motion for right now and make sure we're doing a good job here, because we want to make sure we get this through, I think, for the House on committee of the whole. That's my concern, I guess.
So you withdrawn your motion.
If my second agrees.
I in fact do agree and was going to make the same point, that my memory of the interim was that we relied heavily on Dr. Stoddard and what she said she needed to do a better job at these regional cost adjustments. So I tend to say, let's go with what she said. If we determine something in between where something was missed, or maybe we haven't described it as accurately, we can deal with that. But that was my memory of the interim. I would agree with
Okay.
that.
Thank you, gentlemen. It was a good refresher. Anything else on page 2? Any other amendments on page 2? Page 3? I don't think there's anything on the rest of it. Page 4, page 5, anybody? If not, does anybody have any comments on the bill? Then we'll proceed to vote. Dr. Taylor, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, on House Bill 20, School Finance Regional Cost Adjustment Study. Representative Allred.
Aye.
Representative Andrew. Representative Berger.
Aye.
Representative Brown.
Aye.
Representative Klauston.
Aye.
Representative Lawley.
Aye.
Representative Obermueller.
Aye.
Representative Provenza.
Aye.
Chairman Northrup.
Aye.
9-0.
Thank you. Thank you, committee. All right, so we are now on House Bill 21, Charter School Leasing. This is from the Select Committee on School Facilities. Chairman Brown is the chairman of that committee, also, besides doing roads. It's your baby, take it away.
You guys are a scary looking bunch from down here.
Yeah, well,
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate you bringing this bill forward, and I'll just kind of give you a quick brief history of this bill, what we're trying to do and why this bill was brought forward by the select committee. So if you remember last year, we cut the double funding for ADM for charter schools. And in the process of doing that, we kind of realized, whoops, if we cut the double funding, these charter schools are not being funded adequately nor equitably across the board, and kind of put us in a little bit of a pinch. So what the committee did was to make sure that we were constitutionally bound to the exact same things, helping these charter schools no different. They're still public education institutions. We decided to go back and take a look at their the funding mechanism on this. And if you'll see, the bill that you have before you is not quite the same bill that we had brought before us during the interim. What we had brought to us during the interim was a much more simple bill. And you'll find that is a piece of paper that I had submitted out to you guys. And that just says draft only, not approved for introduction. That is actually what we as a committee saw in our last meeting in September. However, as chairman, I messed around with it and added some language that at the time seemed like a really, really good idea. And to briefly just give you guys an understanding of what that is some of these charter schools across the state, we're having troubles with some of the districts and being able to have the discussions back and forth on whether or not we wanted to have those charter schools in place of an existing building within a school district. And there was some dissension back and forth between the department who was making that recommendation, between the school district saying we don't have to do this. There was a lot of moving parts and pieces. And so I had an amendment drafted at that meeting and I brought it forward. And that's the bill that you'll see right now that basically says, in the event that space is needed, the department who is sitting behind me shall make the determination and that space is needed and all those types of things. And you'll see all that extra language. What I'm proposing for you guys at this point is to go back to the original bill. I'm going to eat humble pie and I'm going to tell you this was a much better bill. We don't need the extra language. And I appreciate the efforts between not only the school districts and the school boards, but as well as the charter schools. Had a quick meal with them late last week and came to me and they told me, hey, look, we've come to an agreement. We don't think we need this, this extra language in here. And also spoke with the department director and kind of said same thing. I think we've got a mechanism in place to handle this discussion. So what I'm asking for is for you to take the draft amendment, which is the second piece of paper that I have given you. And as you look at that, you go, wow, that's a lofty amendment. Don't really know what that's doing. So Ollie will tell you exactly what it's doing is deleting Landon Brown's language that was thrown in there and is not needed. And it is taking us back to the original bill. And that original bill is simply just section 1 that Wyoming statute 21.3.110 A10A3 is repealed. And so what is that repealer? That repealer is very simple. And it says that the charter school has to be approved and it has been approved and successfully operational for a period of not less than 3 years before they start receive funding. Well, we can't take away their double funding and not provide them the same level of funding. So what we have done there is we say we are going to reimburse these institutions at the same rate that we would any other public school. We're not going to give them a 3-year waiting period. That was kind of the impetus between those two when this statute was originally written, is if we're going to double fund them, it's to catch them up on some of the expenditures that they had over the past preceding 3 years. We're not requiring to be that with that 3-year period now. That's what this bill does, is it just puts us in a constitutional basis. So, Mr. Chairman, with that, that's an explanation of what this bill does. And I'm more than happy to carry this on the floor, but if there's any questions from the committee, I'm more than happy to explain those as well.
Questions from the committee for Chairman Brown? You're off the hook.
Okay, thank you.
Can we have the department comment on it? On charter schools? Or somebody? There we go. Welcome.
Push the button. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman. Del McComey with the State Construction Department. And yes, I've met with the charter school folks a couple, 2 or 3 times since in just the last month and talked about the bill. Would like to note on the repealer where that will bring that into force. I don't have any money in the budget to do that. So There was a fiscal note attached to that. There's 3 schools out there. Right now, one of those is in a city building in Casper, and that one would not require any money. There's the second one is in Chugwater, and in Chugwater, that's in a school district building, so it wouldn't require any money. The one that would come online here in Cheyenne would require payment in the future. And again, that's not in my budget because this came about after the budget cycle. I just wanted to point that out, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, just out of curiosity, has that charter school reached out with any determination of what that lease is going to look like? Have you guys started those negotiations? And if so, might be worth it for us to know, but secondarily, I think that's probably a more appropriate area for us to put that in the school facilities budget, in the standard budget, not necessarily this bill, but I do appreciate you bringing that forward. So I'm just curious if you have any information for that.
Mr. Chair, yes, Mr. Chairman, we do. And that was based on our conversations with them earlier in the year. This school, they're going to start off, I believe it's with a K4. And then each succeeding year, they'll add another grade level when they come through that. So the committee may know already, but I'll kind of talk about how that process works. So we'll look at the cost of what it costs in this area in Cheyenne on a square footage basis for a school, or for to go out in the public to try and lease something, a lease price. We'll take that based on the number of students or square footage and then do a calculation, and that comes up with the dollar amount. So for the okay, so the Wyoming Classical Natrona 1, that would be let me come up here above. Let me see here. Okay, so in the original language in the bill, we would have gone out and so Wyoming Classical is in Casper, Natrona 1. So we would have originally went out and looked to see if there was any available schools for that to be in, even though it's already in an old school building that was bought by Mills. So if we went out and did that, we would say they are not eligible because there's a school building there, but that's been taken out of this language. So they would be, and earlier I said they wouldn't be, they would currently now be, if this bill passes the way it is, eligible. So I have those figures for you. For the biennium, it would be $917,654 for Natrona 1. And for Laramie 1, it would be $981,336. Let me go through those one more time. Natrona 1 would be $917,654. And Laramie 1 would be $981,336. So that's a total of $1,898,990. And that's for the biennium. And Mr. Chairman, if it would help, I could just take this note out and pass it up. And so you guys would have it available if you so like. So, okay, thank you. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Department of Education, just kind of give us a review of how these charter schools are doing. Is anybody prepared to do that? I mean, it's kind of an off the wall thing, I know. Just would like an update. How's that?
You bet. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dickie Shaner, Department of Education. So we have 3 that have been authorized. The one in Casper is up and running. The one in Chugwater is up and running. And the one in Cheyenne just broke ground a couple months ago at a church facility here in town. So that one I believe will be opening for class in the fall. In terms of how they're doing, we work with them almost daily on navigating the different things they have to do with interacting with the department, whether it's transportation or special education or accreditation, things of that nature. And then, of course, we have the state authorizing board, which is the board that was appointed to oversee both the approval and the monitoring of these charter schools. And they're about, well, a little under a year into their work as well. So they're working hard and working with our team to make sure we've got all of our processes in place. You know, starting a new board requires quite a bit of stand-up work. But they're getting there and they're doing good on putting everything in place they need to have. And that's pretty much the extent of it right now. But
Very good. Thank you. Questions for Dickie? Go ahead, Vice Chairman Oldby Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What is the status of the kids in Chugwater that are not going to the charter school?
Go ahead,
yeah,
Dickie.
Mr. Chairman, through you, Representative Obermueller, I know it's a pretty small number, if any, but I don't know for sure, but I would imagine they would just go to Wheatland. But yeah, I can follow up on that.
Any other questions for Chief Stuff? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll take more public comment.
Mr. Chairman, Brian Farmer with Wyoming School Boards Association. And with me is Carrie Klein, who's with the charter schools. And so I know that some folks might think that this is not resolving a problem, that by taking away the language that Representative Brown talked about or addressed, that perhaps we're just not addressing some problem that actually exists out there. And Mr. Chairman, the truth is that the issues related to charter school facility finance overall are complex. They're not something that would have been resolved by the language that was provided here in this bill. And so this is a conversation that needs to happen over time. This is a conversation that will require stakeholders coming to the table, having your charter schools, your school districts, your school facilities folks coming together and talking about how might we approach this? What could this look like? And that's some serious work. And it is better to move down a thoughtful road of how can we resolve and address those issues than to put forward some language that might actually create some new and unforeseen problems. I think you heard from the director just a moment ago, but I would emphasize a statement he made. If you passed the language of this bill as is, and they determined that there was available school space in Casper, it would force the Casper Charter School out of their existing space. Says, hey, you've got school district space, so you need to get out of your lease with the city of Mills, and you need to move your space. So that language didn't solve problems. It only created some potential new problems. So the path forward is deliberate work with stakeholders at the table together. And I can't speak for Mrs. Klein, but I can say that that is something that in our discussions, we're all ready to do. We're all ready to come forward and work together on. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Mrs. Klein and then address any questions from the committee, if that's okay.
Very good. Very good. Go ahead, Mrs. Klein.
Thank you. Carrie Klein with the Wyoming Public Charter School Association. And yes, I would reiterate Brian's comments in that we've been working together. We looked at this and as charter schools, we're very supportive of repealing the 3-year wait period. We do really feel that that's the purpose of this bill, was the most important part, to allow them to use that funding to provide better operational educational programs and to serve their students. So we are committed to working together and to really looking at this in the interim and spending some time to consider how we can best support not only charter schools, but also all the students that are involved in both the traditional and the charters in those communities.
Very good. Anybody have questions for Carrie Klein or Brian Farmer? Go ahead, Representative Provenza.
Thank you. Forgive me for not firing on all pistons today, but I just want to be clear. What you're recommending is that we don't move forward with this and we work in the interim together as a collaboration, or are you saying you're ready to do the work moving forward?
Mr. Chairman,
Please go ahead, Brian.
I believe it's not an either or, it's a both and. So we need something through this session. It is the simplified amendment presented to you from Representative Brown. And for the long term, we need to have that comprehensive discussion. That won't be resolved during this session. That is work that can commence through the interim.
Further questions, comments? Okay, thank you for your input. Anybody else like to comment on House Bill? Sorry. I got the wrong copy. 21. Nobody? All right. With that, we will close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure? Move the bill by Lawley, second by, yes, remember. Second by Ocean Andrews. Okay,
Mr. Chairman.
thank you, Mr. Chairman Brown.
Mr. Chairman, I would just move the proposed amendment be adopted, and I will explain everything on the floor for you if I get a second.
We have a second, moved by Brown, seconded by Provenza. To move the presented amendment. Any comments from the committee? None appearing, will proceed to vote.
You have to.
We have to vote.
Voice vote. on
Voice,
that.
voice,
Yeah.
yeah, we have to vote on the amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, now we're gonna vote on the bill. Go ahead, Ashley.
Mr. Chairman, on House Bill 21, charter school leasing, Representative Allred.
Aye.
Representative Andrew. Representative Berger.
Aye.
Representative Brown.
Aye.
Representative Klauston.
Aye.
Representative Lawley. Aye. Representative Obermueller.
Aye.
Representative Provenza. Chairman Northrup.
Aye,
That is 9 ayes.
very good, thank you. We are now on House Bill 40, which is School District Trustee Oath of Office. This is sponsored by Joint Corporations Elections Political Subdivision Interim Committee. Is anybody here from the committee? Anybody here from the committee like to present the logic behind this? Dandy. Okay. What time is it?
111.
We have time. Okay. Well, then let us muddle through it.
Like it's pretty simple.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. It looks to me like they added on page 1, line 11, new language. It says honor before the first day of December before receiving notification of their election, or. So it used to be that the trustees of each school district shall within 10 days after receiving notification or appointment. Oh, good. Hi, guys. Are you on to talk about the oath of office? Why, that'd be great. Please state your names and continue on.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jesse Naaman. I'm the Deputy Secretary of State. To my right is Joe Rubino, our Chief Policy Officer and General Counsel. As this committee's aware, this bill was proposed by the Secretary of State's office and taken up by the Joint Corporations Committee. During the 2023 interim, the intent is to clear up any inconsistency between Wyoming Statute 22-102 and 21-3 106. 22-2102 is clear about when a school district board of trustee members' term starts. However, 21-3-106 is less clear, so our hope is that this will clear this up. Unless there are any questions, our office has no suggestions or changes to the draft language.
So my question is that this just mirrors what's already taking place in 22, whatever it was.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
Further questions? Go ahead, Representative Clausen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just want to be clear. I mean, if the election this year is November 12th and they find out on the 15th that they've won the election, it says within 10 days or by December 1st. So they can pick any time before December 1st as long as they get it done, or they have to do it within those 10 days of once they've been notified.
I'll refer that to Mr. Rubino, Mr. Chairman, and Representative Clouston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Clouston, yeah, that's exactly what this is designed to clear up. So, right, before we had, in Title 21, we had a statute where it was by appointment or election, the 10 days, and by taking out election or before appointment, it bifurcates the appointment process. So if you are appointed at a non-traditional time, then it's within 10 days. All other trustees, which are elected normally, they take their oath of office and they assume office December 1st, which is already provided in Title 22. So all it is it's a conforming amendment to make it consistent, but also we had questions after the 2022 election that this came up in, I believe it was Natrona County, about when actually do I take office. So that's what spurred this. It was just a little fix that we had noticed that we could do. And so that's why we proposed it to the Joint Corporations Committee during the interim. They took it up, and that's why we're here today. So thank you. I hope that answers your question.
Further questions or comments for the gentleman? Anybody? Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You saved us. We were guessing. Anybody else like public comment? Public comment on House Bill 40. Anybody? We have movement in the audience. Mr. Farmer, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian Farmer, Wyoming School Boards Association. I will tell you, school boards are unique compared to other elected offices in that the term of office starts at a different time really than any other elected entity. So given that uniqueness, there has been some lack of clarity over what the elected individual is supposed to do and what the district is supposed to do. And so the practice traditionally across the state has looked a little different from district to district to district. Some districts have interpreted or acted differently upon existing language. It is perhaps a little difficult to pinpoint when is receiving notice of election, notification of election. So right now, when you look in the newspaper, you look online, you look at TV and you see, oh, I'm in or I'm out. Is that notice of election? Probably not. Probably really the notice comes from your county election official, so your county clerk's office. So at the 10 days from the date of notification from your county clerk. Now, that looks different across Wyoming. You can assume mail in Cheyenne from the county clerk to an elected official happens pretty quickly. That's not the case necessarily in other places. So if that notification is happening by way of mail, that can be real disparity, real differences of when people are taking their oath of office. And so the existing situation, the existing circumstance does lead to some potential confusion. When does that time frame clock start? what if I take my oath within that 10 days and then something happens in the school district at the end of November? Something happens and a decision must be made at the end of November. Who does that? The outgoing person, the incoming person, a person who's taken an oath but not yet been seated for office? That can become sort of confusing. And so really this bill creates greater clarity around that term of office as identified in Title 22, which is the election code. And it says that date is a date certain. That starts with your December 1 date. That's why you take your oath in time for you to take your office. And then you are seated in office at the first meeting in December. And so for some folks, that might be right away in December. For some folks, that might not be for a couple of weeks yet in December. If you meet on the third Tuesday of December, then it's going to be a little bit later in the month before you actually are seated. But you will have taken your office and you will be responsible for the office and you will have taken your oath of office all at this time now. That helps create greater clarity around the term of office and the responsibility of the elected individual in fulfilling their term.
Thank you for the clarity. Any questions for Brian? That helps. Thank you. Any other public comment? Public comment going once, twice. All right, we'll close public comment. Committee, what is your pleasure on the bill? Moved by Berger, seconded by Allred. Does anybody have any comments or questions? You want to go through it? It's simple, Bill. Okay. None appearing, we'll just proceed to vote on the bill. Go ahead, Ashley, call a roll.
Mr. Chairman, on House Bill 40, School District Trustee Oath of Office. Representative Allred.
Aye.
Representative Andrew.
Aye.
Representative Berger.
Aye.
Representative Brown. Representative Klauston.
Aye.
Representative Lawley.
Aye.
Representative Obermueller.
Aye.
Representative Provenza. Chairman Northrup.
Aye.
9 ayes.
Very good. Thank you, committee. Remember, we have one bill assigned to us already. I'm sure we'll get some more. They may not be education associated after this, so. We'll have fun.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
um,
Do you want to do this?
who's gonna carry bills? Because
Oh.
some committees are starting from left on down to right. How do you want to see this? Cause I kind of like the idea of starting from the left and on to the right.
Oh, you want?
So anyway, that's my recommendation.
He wants harder bills, yes.
You want the harder bills later. Okay, that's fine.
Why is everybody laughing?
Because you're gonna get the harder bills later.
I might not get a bill.
Okay, Representative Brown has already volunteered to do that one, which is 21. So who would like to do number 20? Left or right? No volunteers?
Sure, I'll do it.
Okay, there we go. And number 40, that's another easy one.
I just tell chairman of that committee.
I'll just tell the chairman to do that.
Yeah.
Vice Chairman Obermueller, will you do number 40?
No, you're gonna assign that to this.
You're gonna send it.
I'm saying to
Oh,
the chairman.
To the chairman of their committee.
Yeah.
Dang it. I wanted you guys to do it. All right.
Chairman Olson will do that.
Okay. We're adjourned.